Hi, my name's Schultz. I'm the winemaker, Cellar Master at Hartenberg Estate. It's one of the oldest producing members in the Stellenbosch region in the Western Cape of South Africa. And we have an association with Cabernet Sauvignon that goes back a good couple of decades. The first Cabernets were bottled in the late 60s, and over time, through two different owners, we've built on that foundation. Today we're part of the Cabernet Collective, an association that promotes the greatness of the grape, as it were. The area I'm in, Stellenbosch, is very much Cabernet capital in South Africa. It's a combination of different elements of terroir, and certainly things like soil. The vineyard I'm standing in is planted on very deep clay-rich loam soils. They have the ability to retain moisture because of the clay content, and we find that they produce Cabernets of great expression, really dark color and lovely structure. We have a combination of power and grace in a glass of wine. So the soil's really friable. It's got beautiful earthy forest floor character, very high levels of clay, and consequently holds moisture really well. Cabernet enjoys good soils. Generally Cabernet, because it's quite thick-skinned and small-berried, doesn't need supplementary forms of irrigation. It's a tough little grape, and at Hartenberg we have over 6 different clones. Clone is an exact replica of the mother plant, with the exception of one variable that it's bred for. So we have clones that give certain aromatics, we have others that are drought resistant, and so on and so on. And often we find a blend of clones is the ideal combination. So recently we've had some very good rains, which is nice because we're, as you can see, late spring, early summer, and typically there are only 2 varieties that show themselves as follows, both being related, Merlot and Cabernet. This is what we call a lobe, and that's called a sinus. And typically Merlot and Cabernet have overlapping lobes, and they leave this little circle if you set them over each other. Cabernet, like Merlot, has a bubbled leaf surface, almost a warty type surface, and on the underside it's not hairy, which you do find on Merlot sometimes. You can see that we have very big internodes at this stage. Internodes is the distance between nodes, and that signifies rapid growth. So we can see we've had a spurt of growth, which is not a bad thing. The vines are dominated by this little guy. It's called the apical meristem. It's the growth point on all plants, but in the case of vines we use this to control vigor. If vines get too vigorous, we do a technique called tipping, which is that. We remove the growth point and we get more lateral side shoot growth. At this stage the vines are thinking about flowering, and we can see the small stamens and pistil on the bunch. Every little flower becomes a berry if pollinated successfully. There are already a few berries, so we're getting through the flowering. Obviously vines are one of the few fruit-bearing plants that don't need insects to pollinate, that they're wind pollinated, and this is also the way that Cabernet originated in the 17th century, through a vineyard marriage between Cabernet Franc and, unbelievably, Sauvignon Blanc, the white. But in their names is the clue that they're related. So those are the parents. And of course today Cabernet is considered king of all grapes, and probably because of its unique ability to age. And some of the greatest wines, red wines on earth, are Cabernet based, the wines from the Medoc. And the reason for that is probably because they have elevated levels of natural tannins. They have the ability to produce very concentrated wines, but tannins are nature's antioxidants, and they tend to slow down aging, and Cabernet has loads of tannin, and if anything, one should be careful of over extracting those tannins. The analogy is similar to soaking a tea bag in a cup of hot water. You can over extract, you can under extract, but if it's just right, it's pretty good. And let's have a taste, and hopefully I can tell you what we find. So I think, is colour important in red wine? I guess it is, in the sense that there are studies that relate colour intensity to wine quality, with the exception of lighter coloured varieties like Grenache or Pinot Noir. Certainly in the Bordeaux reds, the darker the colour generally, there seems to be a parallel to quality. So this is young, it's still completely clear and uniform on the top edge. It shows no bottle aging at all, so it should be very primary. We give it a swirl to free up the flavours, and have a long, gentle sniff to see what we can find. I'm picking up quite a bit of wood spice and cedary cigar box characters. Those descriptors seem to be related to the interaction between the genetics of Cabernet and the wood itself. It's not something that we find in other varieties. So spicy, and then emerging black and red fruit, lots of sour cherry, violets, and quite perfumed, quite expressive, flows out of the glass very nicely. On to taste. I think very pleasing, very supple, it's rich, there's great power, but in a balanced, elegant way. It has a certain gravitas to it. Again, lovely, spicy, cedary, lead pencil flavors mingled with fresh berry fruit, cranberry, plum, strawberry characters. It's all there.